There are many reasons why a person would think to take the life of another, all of which heinous and selfish. Sexual crimes are ones that are especially not warranted, but all sexual crimes are premeditated by the predator. What is going on, B.O.L.O Crew? And thank you so much for joining me in today's video. And if you haven't already, please be sure that you're liking today's video and subscribing to my channel because it's free to show your love and support. January 31st, 1976, Marie Spanicki and her fiance, John Bayruth, were having a disagreement inside of a supermarket in Chico, California. Marie was so upset by the argument with her fiance John that she had decided she was going to walk herself back to their apartment. However, Marie was new to the area, having just moved to California from Cleveland, Ohio. Now, Marie didn't know her exact way around the area. So by February 2nd, 1976, when Marie had not returned home, John would contact authorities and report Marie as missing. Just over a year later, on May 19, 1977, 21-year-old Colleen Stan was traveling by hitchhike to surprise a friend in Eugene, Oregon for her birthday. Colleen had made it all the way to Red Bluff, California, when a blue van, husband, wife, and their baby offered to let her ride some of the distance with them. Up until this blue van, Colleen had already turned down 2 cars coming her direction because she was getting this really uneasy feeling. So seeing this couple and their baby made Colleen extremely comfortable. Colleen was trying to follow her intuition, knowing that hitchhiking could be dangerous. You never know who's driving down, what they have in their vehicle, where they're going, or their state of mind. You always have to be B.O.L.O, especially in instances like this. So Colleen's intuition said, hey, girl, this couple got a baby. You know, maybe you'll get to where you're going safely. The couple that were driving this blue van were Cameron and Janice Hooker. Now, along the way, they had all stopped at a gas station and Colleen had gone inside to use the bathroom. When Colleen returns to the van, there was a square wooden box that sat beside the seat next to her. Colleen had a gut feeling. Colleen wanted to run, but she stayed seated in the van. Less than 20 miles after leaving the gas station, Cameron had taken an awkward turn off of the main road, and he was headed to a secluded area. There, he will pull a knife onto Colleen and force the wooden box over Colleen's head. Colleen at that moment was deprived of all natural senses. She couldn't see, smell, taste, or hear regularly. Enclosed inside of this wooden box that was now around her head. Still inside of the van was Cameron, Janice, and their baby. Cameron and Janice would drive Colleen to their home in Red Bluff, California. They would place Colleen into the basement of their home. In the basement, Colleen would be suspended with chains into the air by her wrists and by her ankles. Nearly immediately, Cameron would subject Colleen to all sorts of torture. Poor Colleen. She was gagged, blindfolded, even handcuffed at points in times, and even electrocuted. And every time poor Colleen would cry, she would be whipped by Cameron, all while Janice watched. Through the blindfold that Colleen had placed around her eyes, she could still see a table, and on the table was a magazine, and on the magazine was a picture of a woman suspended in the air, much like her. It was a sadistic sexual magazine that Cameron was imitating. Cameron had done it. He had finally captured his slave. 20-year-old Janice and 23-year-old Cameron Hooker were a young married couple. Now, according to Janice, she was Cameron's sex slave, his slave of torture, his toy, and she had endured all of these monstrous things that Cameron had desired inside of the bedroom up until the time that Janice had wanted children. She told Cameron that she had desired children. What Cameron said to Janice was, "You can have a baby if I can have a sex slave." Janice agreed, only under the condition that the slave not be used for sexual gratifications, but specifically for the torture and satisfaction of Cameron's wicked desires. The burden had fallen into the lap of Colleen Stan. Colleen had vanished to the rest of the world. Cameron even took away Colleen's identity by giving her a slave name, naming her Kay. Colleen stayed in the basement of the Hooker's home until, for some unknown reason, they had moved out of that family home and into a much smaller mobile home where they took Colleen with them. There, things would just get worse because there was no basement or any open space for Colleen to actually exist. So Cameron had taken it upon himself and had personally made a handcrafted coffin-like box where Colleen would spend most of her days under the Hooker's bed. Colleen would ultimately sleep in this box. She would spend more than half of her days in this box. Colleen would only be let out so that she didn't die in the box. She would get out for fresh air. They even had a bedpan in the box for Colleen because they were not going to let her escape or even attempt to escape. After so much time had gone by, Cameron and Janice would have another child. And eventually, Colleen, not screaming or not fighting them, had gained the trust of Cameron and was allowed to be out of the box during the time that the Hookers worked to take care of the house and the children. Colleen's obedience was a necessity for Cameron. Cameron had fabricated an entire story to tell Colleen. He told Colleen that they were all part of a slave cult, that their home has always been monitored by this slave cult that called themselves the company. Cameron would assure Colleen that this was an aggressive group of people and that if she had tried to escape, that the company knew where her family lived and they knew who she was, and that not only her, but her family would be hurt had she tried to escape. Cameron would do another unthinkable act and write up a slave contract for Colleen to sign to say that she was going to be obedient and continue to be obedient to save her family and herself. This contract would need the signature of Colleen Stan. The desires that Cameron had for Colleen had developed and had turned romantic and sexual. Soon, He would begin engaging in sexual activities with Colleen regularly, unbeknownst to Janice. 2.5 years after being abducted by the hookers, for some unknown reason, Cameron decided that Colleen could call home. She was trusted enough. He let her dial her family's home and speak to her family and tell them that she was happily in a relationship with Cameron, that she was safe, and that it was her choice to leave when she left. Just 1.5 years after the phone calls were allowed, Colleen would be granted the motion to visit her home and her family. That was in 1981. Although her family were thoroughly confused to who Colleen was as a person anymore and how she could just up and leave without telling them that she was okay, they welcomed her in the home and Cameron beside her as well. You know, they didn't want Colleen to go on and run off again without contacting them. And so they didn't want to poke the bear. So they weren't sure what they could say or that if they even wanted to say anything. They just wanted to enjoy and try to get back the time lost with Colleen. Cameron had it all figured out. He was beside Colleen, acting as her loving and very caring boyfriend. And her family bought it. They didn't see why they wouldn't buy it. Colleen was sitting before them, and Cameron had his acting face on. And in 1983, Cameron's trust for Colleen was so much that he had even allowed her to get a part-time job to help take care of the family. Even then, Colleen kept her secret from co-workers or even new friends she would meet. She told no one what she had gone through or what she had been going through. At this point, she was completely brainwashed and uncertain of what was an okay move and what not, so all she could do was to play it safe. Janice and Colleen would even begin to be allowed to go out together to bars and even socialize. Cameron had began allowing Janice to even talk to or time to time go home with other men. Soon Janice would realize what was really up, and she would become aware of the sexual relationship between Cameron and Colleen. Janice began to despise Colleen. Cameron had fallen madly in love with her. He was so in love with Colleen that he had even told Janice, "I want to marry her," and confessed his love for Colleen. That didn't sit right with Janice. And in 1984, Janice told Colleen everything. How the cult was fake. She told her about the real reason why they had abducted her, and even about other crimes they had committed before her. One that included Marie Spinaki. Colleen immediately requested to leave, to be let free, and to be driven to the bus station so that she could return home and back to her normal and natural life. Janice, without hesitation, gave the okay and had driven Colleen to the bus station with her own children in the car. When Colleen gets to this bus station, she finds the nearest payphone and she rings their home, and Cameron answers. She told Cameron that she knew about everything, and she told him that she was leaving him. Cameron cried. He cried. He cried over the phone for Colleen, probably pleading for her understanding in his madness. However, Colleen would return home this year. Janice at that moment takes the children and she leaves Cameron, but just a short while later, her and Cameron would reunite. However, feeling so guilty and ashamed of herself for the last 7 years spent torturing and brainwashing Colleen, Janice had begun regularly attending a church and trying to repent her sins. The guilt was weighing on her, and Janice would use the confession box and tell the pastor every specific nasty detail of the crimes that they had committed against Colleen. And at that time, the pastor requested to contact authorities, and Janice, she let the pastor contact authorities, and they would meet her and speak with her. Janice would speak with Detective Al Shanlin, telling him as well about the entire ordeal. She also did not fail to mention the horrific way that Marie Spinanki had lost her life to the hands of Cameron, telling authorities that Marie was strangled, beaten, and shot in the head by Cameron, and then they discarded her body like trash. From that point on, a warrant would be issued for the home of Cameron and Janice. During their search, they found a mountain of evidence that Colleen had in fact been existing in their home, included their slave contract and even the coffin-like box and the wooden box that was placed over Colleen's head. They found photos and even videos that sicko Cameron and Janice had just had lying around the house like it was normal, raising their children in the house. Janice, for testifying against Cameron, was granted immunity. She would face no charges related to the kidnapping, to the torture, to the sexual disposition that she had with Colleen, as long as she testified against her husband. Cameron Hooker was arrested. He was charged with kidnapping, oral copulation, rape by a foreign object, sodomy, and 6 additional charges of rape. In the trial, People versus Hooker, 1988, prosecuting attorneys had so much evidence against Cameron, including their witness, although Colleen had not gone to authorities at all after she left and went home. She would also agree to testify against Cameron. As we know, it is innocent until proven guilty, and the defense's job is to give doubt to the jury that this may or may not have been the exact motions or the exact actions of Cameron. And as long as they are able to get one juror that has doubt in their mind about what has taken place, the case can go on, and the defense will just keep building around that. What the defense did was try to paint Colleen as a willing participant. After discovering the slave contract, Colleen, although she stayed, was experiencing what is called Stockholm Syndrome, where you are not able to separate yourself from the victim mentally. And this wasn't like it is today, where you have social media and all of these different outlets that honestly could possibly help you be more aware of like certain types of crimes that could be committed against you. So they were trying to use Colleen's vulnerability against her to win the case for Cameron. They even tried to say that Colleen was a willing participant to get into the coffin-like box under the bed of the Hookers. So each juror decided they wanted to try it out to see how comfortable it was. And each one that experienced this coffin-like box would say how uncomfortable and how claustrophobic they would become, and just how unsettling overall the experience was to be in that box even for 5 minutes. And they didn't believe that Colleen would spend years in there willingly. Court moved in favor of the prosecution, and Cameron will be sentenced to 104 years in prison. From there, Janice would change her name. Colleen would move on and experience the reality that her life had forever been altered, and it was difficult for her to maintain relationships, as anyone could see why, after something like this. In 2015, Cameron would go up for parole, but was then denied due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and his next parole hearing was and has been delayed. What do you guys think about today's case? Do you believe that this was a misunderstanding and that Colleen had consented to all of these horrific acts against her? Or did we get justice in this case for Colleen? Now, although authorities had all of the knowledge from Janice about Marie Spinaki's disappearance and that she had been indeed murdered, they were unable to locate her body even after the location was given up from about where she was. Because they were unable to locate her, there was no justice in this case for Marie, and she has never been found. Personally, I don't think Janice would make something weird like that up just to put it on herself, or even just to put it on Cameron. But also, Colleen had said she had even seen the ID of a woman that resembled Marie in the home of the hookers. But unfortunately, they were not able to prove the accusations against Cameron. If you have made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. You are so beautiful and I love you. And remember, B.O.L.O Crew, to stay on the lookout, because you never know what's lurking inside the heart of someone else. I will see you babies in my next video. You're watching the Amanda K channel. It's the middle of summer. Are y'all eating y'all fruits and y'all vegetables? Getting your protein in? Taking care of that body? I hope so. Now, the message today is to be on the lookout. B.O.L.O. B.O.L.O. Unfortunately, at those times, hitchhiking was a thing. But now they were much more aware about how people's mental health affects everyday society, whether you're aware of it or not. Whether you're walking through Walmart and some crazy person does something crazy, you just never know. Be aware. B.O.L.O. Now, we know the holidays done passed and we've all had some good food, at least I have. And yeah, I'm just trying to come back from that. And the best thing I'm gonna do, y'all, what do I be telling y'all? Drink your water. I'm gonna drink my water. And because I haven't told y'all what kind of water I drink, I'm gonna let you know exactly what you can do. Drink this water or this water, but just stay away from the tap water. You're gonna make yourself sick. We all seen or saw, continuing to see, what happened in Flint, Michigan. What makes you feel like you're any better than Flint, Michigan? Like that can't happen here. What if it's slowly happening and you just don't know it? It could have slowly happened to them. Would you want to be a victim of something like that? Or just get you some nice, fresh water that you can drink, hydrate yourself, and go to the gym. Work it off, y'all. Go to the gym. That's what I'm going to do. Because I'm going to do it, I'm going to tell you to do it. Go to the gym. Get it together, babe. Get it together.